Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. The Himalayan nation of Nepal, wedged between India and China, plunged into chaos on the 8th of September following a police crackdown on the Gen Z-led demonstrations against a government ban on social media, corruption and poor governance. In the subsequent days, at least 51 people were killed in the worst violence witnessed in a nation of 30 million people since the abolition of the monarchy in 2008. The political uncertainty ended and a semblance of normalcy returned to the streets of Nepal on Friday after President Ramchandra Paudel appointed the former Supreme Court Chief Justice Sushila Karki as the interim Prime Minister, making her the first woman to lead the country. Experts, however, have adopted a more cautious tone, warning that Nepal is in for a long period of uncertainty. Our next report gets you more details.
The Himalayan nation of Nepal has witnessed its share of turmoil, from civil war to political upheaval, but nothing compared to the violence that engulfed the birthplace of Lord Buddha this week. The trouble began on Monday when 21 protesters were killed in a police crackdown on Gen Z-led demonstrations in capital Kathmandu and other parts of Nepal against a government ban on social media, corruption and poor governance. According to the Assembly International, police resorted to live ammunition as well as rubber bullets, tear gas, water cannon and batons when the demonstrators pushed through barbed wire and tried to storm into a restricted area near Parliament.
I was sitting under the overhead bridge when a bullet passed through my right hand. It was not a rubber bullet, but a metal one, and it took away part of my hand. The doctor says I need to undergo an operation. I was there for a peaceful protest, but the government used force. I had no fault at all.
By Tuesday, the protests had grown into a broader movement against corruption and political stagnation. Angry demonstrators torched parliament, government and presidential offices and a newly opened Hilton hotel. Former Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli's office was vandalized and his Balcourt residence was set ablaze. Hours later, facing cabinet resignations and mounting public fury, Oli announced his resignation, but that did not assuage the simmering anger.
Why is there so much anger here? The international media believes this is happening because social media is banned, but no, this frustration has been building for over 2 decades, fueled by corruption. Every one of us has had enough. These thugs have troubled us time and time again, and what you see now is just a spark ignited by social media. To our international friends, the Prime Minister's resignation alone is not good enough. Tomorrow they could easily form another coalition with all the national parties gathering around the same table once again, but we are here to break the cycle.
Before the soldiers retook control of the streets the following day, at least 51 people, including 21 protesters, 9 prisoners, 3 police officers and 18 others were killed, besides 1,300 others being wounded. In addition to this, about 13,500 prisoners escaped from multiple jails nationwide, taking advantage of the mayhem and chaos. 12,500 of these prisoners are still on the run, some of which have reportedly tried to cross into neighboring India, where scores have been apprehended by Indian border forces. Our correspondent Saloni Murarka sent us this ground report. Sensing the gravity of the situation, a curfew was imposed by the Nepal's army, which said that it had recovered more than 100 guns looted in the turmoil. An eerie calm returned in Kathmandu on Friday, with cars in the streets and police personnel taking up batons instead of the guns they were brandishing early this week. On Friday evening, in a culmination of sorts, following the deadly anti-corruption protests which toppled the government, Nepal's former Chief Justice Sushila Karki, widely seen as an anti-corruption voice, was sworn in to lead the transition as the country's interim Prime Minister, thereby bestowing upon her the distinction of being the first woman to lead the country.
After days of mass protests and political uncertainty, Nepal now finally has a Prime Minister. Sushila Karki was sworn in as the interim Prime Minister and has assured that she will focus on restoring order, hold elections in 6 months, that will be in March 2026, and also focus on Nepal's development. At this moment of deep crisis, she faces one of the biggest challenges, as many of the key infrastructure buildings, government administrative buildings, have been targeted, torched and vandalized. She'll have to focus on the job opportunities, as many of these jobs have been affected in this 1 week of uncertainty and tension. The tourism factor, which has been affected in the last 1 week, has to be brought out in light, as the tourism is the biggest contributor to Nepal's GDP. At the moment, Nepal Army has relaxed curfew in the valley, and we can see the movement in and around. Many of the shops have opened up, and many of the people here, locals, have also welcomed the appointment of Sushila Karki as the interim leader.
But if there's a lesson to be learned, Nepal needs not to look farther than Bangladesh, which too, following nationwide protests, ousted the ruling dispensation, appointed an interim head about a year back, but has seen no end to political instability. Will Nepal go the Bangladesh's way? Well, only time will tell.
The tiny Gulf state of Qatar has hosted Hamas's political office since 2012 and has been instrumental in facilitating several rounds of indirect negotiations between the Palestinian group and the United States and Israel. On the 9th of September, Israel bombed Qatar in a bid to target Hamas's senior leaders, who were in the middle of discussing their formal response to the US's ceasefire proposal in the Qatari capital Doha. According to the Israeli media, the operation involved about 15 Israeli fighter jets that dropped 10 bombs on Doha. In the aftermath of the unprecedented strikes on the Gulf state, Hamas said that about 5 of its members were killed, but that its top leadership survived. It seems Qatar for long had been lulled into complacency, courtesy a presidential jet that was gifted to Donald Trump and a massive US airbase on its soil. But now, it's been rudely woken up from its slumber. Our next report gets more.
Early on Tuesday afternoon, the first Israeli strikes in the gas-rich peninsular Gulf state of Qatar sent shockwaves through the region that has been long shielded from conflicts elsewhere in West Asia. Explosions were heard and plumes of smoke rose above a heavily damaged section of a complex close to the West Bay Lagoon district, north of central Doha. Calling the Israeli strikes a flagrant violation of Qatar's sovereignty, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres was quick to condemn the Israeli action.
We are just learning about the Israeli attacks in Qatar, a country that has been playing a very positive role to achieve a ceasefire and release of all hostages. I condemn this flagrant violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Qatar. All parties must work towards achieving a permanent ceasefire, not destroying it.
On Thursday, amid tight security, a funeral ceremony was held for 6 people killed in the Israeli strikes targeting Hamas leadership in a Doha mosque, attended by the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, who prayed alongside dozens of mourners. Hamas had admitted earlier that 5 of its members were killed, which included top negotiator Khalil al-Hayya's son, Hammam, his office director and 3 of his bodyguards. Additionally, a Qatari lance corporal was also killed in the Israeli strikes, Calling the Israeli strikes unilateral, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, expressed dissatisfaction.
Well, I'm not thrilled. I'm not thrilled about it. I don't have to do that. I'm not thrilled about the whole situation. It's not a good situation. But I will say this, we want the hostages back. But we are not thrilled about the way that went down today.
Hours after the attack, Donald Trump claimed that as soon as he was notified of the attack, he had immediately directed US Special Envoy to West Asia, Steve Witkoff, to inform Qatar, but that the notification was made too late to stop it. The Qatari government reacted with fury and labeled the strikes reckless and cowardly, and a blatant violation of all international laws and norms. Addressing a press conference the same day, the Qatari Prime Minister warned that his country reserves the right to respond to Israel's deadly attack on Hamas in Doha.
Netanyahu himself stated that he will reshape the Middle East. Does this message imply that he intends to reshape the Gulf as well? We believe that today we have reached a pivotal moment. There must be a response from the entire region to such barbaric actions.
President Donald Trump has assured Qatar, a strong US ally and friend in Trump's own words, that such a thing will not happen again on Qatari soil. But despite assurances, a sense of betrayal and insecurity has permeated through Qatari leadership, compelling it to reevaluate its position. The big question: how will the blatant Israeli attack on Qatar, a sovereign nation, affect the US airbase Al Udeid and, more significantly, US's relations with all its Gulf Arab allies?
The right-wing American influencer Charlie Kirk was shot dead in broad daylight in front of a crowd of hundreds of young college students. Ironically, Charlie Kirk was answering a question on mass shootings and gun violence in the United States. A lifelong proponent of the Second Amendment, which gives all American citizens the constitutional right to keep and bear arms, Charlie Kirk was stoutly defending the Second Amendment when the gunman shot him dead with a single bullet to his throat from a distance of 180 meters. According to the Utah Governor Spencer Cox, not since the 1960s has the United States been convulsed with a political assassination of this nature that has shocked the nation and has forced the bristling political scene of the United States to come to a pause. The gunman was taken into custody within 33 hours of the crime, thanks to the shooter's father, who drove his 22-year-old son, Tyler Robinson, to a police station, once his son had confessed to him of having executed Charlie Kirk in this bone-chilling manner. But make no mistake about this. Even though Charlie Kirk was killed for his right-wing activism and the political positions that he took, the manner in which he was killed by a gunman whose motivations are still not clear, who had access to a gun because of the lax gun laws of the United States, makes Charlie Kirk's death a part of a greater American statistic. Now try to make sense of this. The United States, a first world nation, a nation that calls itself the land of the free, witnessed a staggering 47,000 deaths in the year 2023 due to gun-related violence. Now, Charlie Kirk was killed in the middle of a bustling university, but Americans have been shot dead by psychopathic gunmen on streets, in concerts, in shopping malls. Young American children have been shot dead mercilessly inside schools. And yet, nothing has convinced the American politicians to take a hard look at the Second Amendment and to weigh in the havoc that easy gun access has caused to the American society. Our next report gets you more. Charlie Kirk had done this over and over again. Seated exposed in front of hundreds of bright young students, many of them his fans, and many of them who did not agree with his ideas, taking questions from them, interacting with them in a no-holds-barred format to intellectually win them over to his side. But the 10th of September was different. Seated in front of the students at the Utah Valley University, Charlie Kirk was again defending the Second Amendment when a single gunshot rang out, silencing the crowd. Charlie Kirk was hit directly in the neck, and then all of a sudden, there was complete pandemonium. Some students ducked for cover, while others ran in a bid to get away from the scene.
So I was with one of my good friends, and as soon as the gun went off, we both hit the floor, started praying. Everyone was screaming, and then we got up and we just started running, and we made it to our apartment.
Donald Trump, whose campaign Charlie Kirk had stoutly supported, put out a social media message asking for prayers. And even though Charlie Kirk was rushed to a hospital, it soon emerged that the man who had lived all his life supporting the right of US citizens to bear arms was shot dead by a lone gunman in the middle of a university campus. Immediately, a massive manhunt was launched. The FBI released still images of a person of interest, and within 33 hours, the police had the suspect in custody. The police also released the footage of the shooter jumping from over the rooftop where he had taken position to shoot at Charlie Kirk and then slinking away into the woods after the crime. The suspect's identity was revealed as 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, a young man described as shy by those who knew him. The gun that was recovered by the police was an unlicensed hunting gun. But what was the motive behind the killing? The investigative authorities point towards political radicalization.
Investigators discovered a bolt-action rifle wrapped in a dark-colored towel. The rifle was determined to be a Mauser Model 98 30-06 caliber bolt-action rifle. The rifle had a scope mounted on top of it. Investigators noted inscriptions that had been engraved on casings found with the rifle. Inscriptions on a fired casing read, "Notices, bulges, capital O-W-O, what's this, question mark." Inscriptions on the 3 unfired casings read, "Hey fascist, exclamation point, catch, exclamation point." Up arrow symbol, right arrow and symbol, and 3 down arrow symbols. A second unfired casing read, "Oh Bella Chow, Bella Chow, Bella Chow, Chow Chow." And a third unfired casing read, "If you read this, you are gay, LMAO."
The Utah governor also said that he wished that the shooter was not one of them. But this wish of Spencer Cox was not to be. There was an immediate outpouring of grief. Vigils were held across the United States to mourn the killing of Charlie Kirk. People lit candles and placed wreaths. The widow of Charlie Kirk, in a tearful message, said that Charlie Kirk's memory and his activism would not be forgotten.
The evildoers responsible for my husband's assassination have no idea what they have done. They killed Charlie because he preached a message of patriotism, faith, and of God's merciful love. They should all know this. If you thought that my husband's mission was powerful before, you have no idea. You have no idea what you just have unleashed across this entire country and this world. You have no idea. You have no idea the fire that you have ignited within this wife. The cries of this widow will echo around the world like a battle cry. To everyone listening tonight across America, the movement my husband built will not die. It won't. I refuse to let that happen. It will not die.
There is a fear now in America that the brazen killing of Charlie Kirk could spark a vicious cycle of other similar political assassinations. For a nation that is seeking to come to terms with what has happened, this is a moment for soul searching. Does the Second Amendment that gives the right to bear arms to all Americans, does it actually make America safe? Or does it make it easier for a psychopath to acquire a gun who can snuff out a life, anywhere and any time in the United States. At least 89 people were killed by rebels linked to the Islamic State affiliate in twin overnight assaults on Monday in the embattled Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Reportedly, most of the victims were hacked to death with machetes by the Allied Democratic Forces, or the ADF, in the nighttime assaults targeting two villages in the North Kivu province. Though the ADF has not confirmed the casualty count, the Islamic State Central African province, to which the group is affiliated, confirmed the attack and claimed that more than 100 people had been killed. The Democratic Republic of Congo's restive northeast has been plagued by the ADF since the middle of the 1990s, despite the Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda launching a joint military operation against the ADF at the end of 2021. It has failed to put an end to their attacks so far. Our next report gets you more.
Africa's second largest country, the Democratic Republic of Congo, ranks among the 5 poorest nations in the world. Compounding the problem for the impoverished nation is the insurgency in its east, which it has been battling for decades. More than 120 rebel groups are fighting with national armed forces for power, land and valuable mineral resources. Prominent among these rebel groups is the Allied Democratic Forces, which emerged in Uganda in the 1990s, accusing the government there of persecution of Muslims, but have since based themselves over the border in Democratic Republic of Congo. Since the mid-1990s, they have killed thousands of civilians of all religions, both in the restive northeast of Congo as well as in Uganda. In the year 2019, they pledged allegiance to the Islamic State group, which touts them as part of its Islamic State Central Africa Province chapter. Given their scourge, a joint military operation baptized as Shuja was launched by Uganda and the Democratic Republic of Congo at the end of 2021, but the offensive has proved to be unsuccessful so far. Both armies, though, have managed to push the rebels back into the remote and inaccessible areas, which has resulted in the local civilians bearing the brunt of the rebels' particularly violent methods. In the latest overnight assaults on Monday, at least 71 people were killed and an unspecified number were wounded. The unfortunate victims had assembled for a funeral in the village of Mitoyo in Lubero territory in northern Kivu province.
We've just lost many of our loved ones because of the massacre in Lubero territory. I've lost many relatives. That's why I came to retrieve the bodies.
We are fleeing due to rising violence. The ADF attacked us in the village of Ntoyo. You've seen that many people were killed, which frightens us and forces us to flee and abandon the village.
About the same time, the ADF rebels attacked Fotodu, a settlement around 125 kilometers away in the same province, killing at least 18 people. Reportedly, there was utter carnage in both the villages, with some victims being burnt to death in their homes. On Wednesday, with Ntoyo almost emptied of its inhabitants, a funeral ceremony was organized hurriedly for some of the victims. These coordinated strikes stand as some of the deadliest by the Islamic State-linked Allied Democratic Forces in recent months. What's even worse is that the Congolese soldiers were stationed about 10 kilometers from the attack site, in the mining town of Mangurejipa, but did not respond in time, according to local civil society officials. But the Congolese army claim that the barbaric attacks is an attempt to divert attention from their ongoing joint military operation with the Ugandan military targeting the militant group.
This enemy is being pursued deep into the territory and is truly under pressure. To escape the pressure from the armed forces of the Democratic Republic of Congo and the UPDF, they've chosen to scatter into small groups to attack from behind. By attacking the rear, they reveal their weakness because they cannot confront the defense and security forces directly.
According to reports, nearly 90% of Islamic State operations in Africa are now carried out by its affiliates. On 27th of July, triggering international outrage, more than 40 people were killed by the ADF in a raid on a Catholic church in the town of Komanda in northeastern Democratic Republic of Congo, bringing an end to the months-long period of calm in the embattled region. This recent rash of deadly raids by the ADF militants is yet another grim reminder that the war in mineral-rich Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo is far from over.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of World at War. And if you want to reach out to me with any comments, feedback or suggestions, please feel free to do so on the ID that you're seeing on your screens. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh, and I'll see you again next week.